I'm going to be reading a piece called On I Can't Breathe, which was my response to the murder of George Floyd. And the aspect that fascinated me the most, apart from the tragic nature of it and the way in which it tells us about the status, the condition of race in America today and around the world, actually, was language. And this festival is one of its key starting points is the idea of river of language. And I was just interested in just 3 words from the tragedy of George Floyd, and that's what my piece is about. It's called On I Can't Breathe. Never in my life has the case of such visible injustice moved white and Black people, moved them as human beings. There have been protests all across America, but there have been huge protests all across the world. Why has the murder of George Floyd struck such a profound chord in us? Perhaps the 9 weeks of lockdown purified people's sense of justice and freedom. Also, it was the first big emotional news people heard coming out tentatively from the lockdown, and it hit us like a sledgehammer. But maybe it was the phrase, I can't breathe. The consonance of the phrase with the very root of our pandemic fears is uncanny. The phrase linked the pandemic with the ubiquitous and implacable nature of institutional racism. I can't breathe. And people were prepared to risk coronavirus just so they could express their protest. There have been many times in the past when Black people have been gagged, strangled, and choked by the police in America and even here in Britain. The names of Black people who have died unjustly at the hands of police are legion. The policemen have mostly gotten off scot-free. What happened to George Floyd isn't new. I can't breathe in any other time would have sparked riots, but not the crossover protest on this universal scale. This time is different. This time it is epochal. Language taps into primal fears. We don't really empathize when we understand. People understand racism. It isn't difficult to understand. But still people don't behave as if they understand. Perhaps we empathize best when we can enter into the condition. I can't breathe suddenly equates racism with the deprivation of air, which is what it always was. Previously, we saw racism, if we saw it at all, as a diminishment of a person's humanity. But that was always too vague. I can't breathe goes beyond saying that you are depriving me of freedom, of humanity, of respect. It says, you are depriving me of the very right to air itself. I can't breathe. We need a new language to express the fundamental clarity of what happens when people are demonized, excluded, deprived, oppressed, and murdered because of the color of their skin. We need a new language for that condition. Only extreme terminal agony could have expressed the very heart of what racism does when George Floyd, whispering, said, I can't breathe. Not even Shakespeare, Walt Whitman, James Baldwin, or Toni Morrison, at their most eloquent, came out with anything as simple in the genius of its truth as, I can't breathe. Maybe it should be the phrase that people who are oppressed should use. It should become the mantra of oppression. Maybe every time the police stop you in your car for no other reason than that you're Black, you should say, I can't breathe. Maybe every time people cross the road in the evenings, when they see you, a placard should be held up that says, "I can't breathe." Maybe when jobs are denied you, deserved promotions elude you, or when the police come to windrush deport you, the moment should be recorded on your phone while saying, "I can't breathe." Maybe the true response to all the subtle and deadly forms that racism takes should have a new code. I can't breathe. The truth is that I can't breathe hints at the apocalypse of human values. When George Floyd said, "I can't breathe," and still the police officer applied the chokehold to his windpipe, it was declared in that moment that the human life means nothing in that country. That's where the apocalypse begins. I can't breathe will become the condition of the world. We ignore the deadly warnings of climate catastrophe. It took the worldwide outcry of the Me Too movement to signal to the world that millions of women are in situations where they can't breathe. Boris Johnson on his respirator, lingering for days between life and death, perhaps knew the meaning of I can't breathe. Across the world right now, we are asking ourselves what it means to be human. When people say they are colorblind, they're being naive. They're in sweet denial. History is not colorblind. Examine the history of slavery and colonialism and genocide. Education is not colorblind. Otherwise, the objective facts of what a people have done and what have been done to a people would be as much a part of the curriculum as the death of Socrates, the plays of Shakespeare, and basic mathematics. Culture is not colorblind. Otherwise, the history of art would include the rock sculpture of Zimbabwe, the radical interventions of David Hammons, and the paintings of Ben Ewonwu. Maybe the real trouble is color deficiency. We know what racism is. It is, finally, the reduction of the human race to the validity of one race. Put another way, it is saying that there is a hierarchy of being human, that some are more human than others, or that some are less. The moment you think, even unconsciously, that one race is superior to another, that is the beginning of murder. It is the beginning of genocide. By small degrees, what is innocently thought of as minor variations of a human hierarchy degenerates into allowing one set of people to suffer and endure conditions that another set of people would not tolerate for themselves. Racism is a human problem. It can be solved. All it takes is facing the truth that many of us have been lied to about history and about other people's humanity. All it takes is realizing that to passively sanction the diminishment of anyone's humanity on any ground is to sanction your own diminishment too. This really isn't rocket science. Racism is a failure to be human. This lack of empathy is part of the problem that is destroying our world. It extends not just to humans, but to other species and to the planet as a whole. That police officer who pressed his knee on George Floyd's neck snuffed out one life, but lit a universal fire. It is deeply moving that the world responded not to the death of a great man or woman, but to the murder of one of the earth's poor and seemingly insignificant people. We know what to do. We must tear out the unconscious racism in our spirit. We must insist on the human rights of all peoples. We must let people live their freedom and their possibilities within the law. This is a great moment in the life of humanity, and it is rich with the possibilities for change. Maybe I can't breathe will begin the real change that our world so desperately needs. Let's all breathe.
Ben, thank you. That was really, really beautiful. and profound, and so much. There was so much to think about in there. Thank you so much, Ben. There's really so much work to be done, and so much reflection and introspection, and I know the road ahead is long, and the task is very great, but we're really grateful for you for joining us this evening, but even more broadly for sharing your thoughts and sharing your encouragement. I think that's a great thing to be able to give to us as humanity, is encouragement to do better and
join forces.
And join forces.
Join our spirits together to get over this.
Yeah.
This degrading human failing of ours, because it's a human failing. It's nothing less.
Yeah, absolutely. So Ben, let me thank you. We're so grateful that you made the time to join us with your beautiful backdrop, which shows the riches of your mind too, not just your bookshelves. But we'll be reading and encouraging you from wherever we are in the world. So thank you for joining us.
Thank you very much. Take care, everybody.
Thank you, Ben. Take care.